Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be with you this afternoon. And with your permission, we will virtually transform this podium into our roundtable, at least virtually, with some physical limitations. So I'm inviting all our panelists to come, and they are already here, and I will sit with them. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to meet you all, and a special thanks to our distinguished guests, whom I will introduce to you shortly. But first of all, a big thanks to Lola and to the organizers for having listened to my plea and include a panel on economic issues into the program. Because this is how we can prove, we can check whether conservative values can or could be put into practice. Because in economic policy, yes, I think we have to have conservative values validated. What kind of values do I refer to? First of all, to freedom. A lot has been said about it, so I think it's very good that our panel follows the panel on freedom. As Gudrun said, never take freedom for granted. In economic policies, I think we all experience a lot of dangers, at least in the European Parliament. I feel it every day, that our economic freedom is at stake. What do I call freedom in economic terms? Well, freedom of entrepreneurship, freedom to create favorable conditions for doing business, for bringing into good position SMEs, for family businesses, good conditions, a friendlier regulatory environment, less administrative burden, access to finance, lower taxes. So these are the fundamentals of a conservative economic policy. And then the freedom to have your own family and of the size as you wish, i.e. that you don't have financial constraints when you decide about how big family you want. And finally, the protection and the promotion of families. I think it's a major task for any government because, and I hope this panel will prove, that running pro-family policies is a good investment, even in economic terms. Well, we all know that times are not easy for doing business. Europe's competitiveness is in danger, but it's not only in Europe, but since, let's say, 2008, we have been living in an era where periods of crisis and recovery have been alternating all over the world. If you remember, in 2008, it started with a financial crisis, which transformed into an economic crisis, a sovereign debt crisis in Europe, a euro crisis, so the common currency crisis here. Then, after a smaller recovery, not very stable, but still a smaller recovery, again, another crisis, this time caused by a virus, the COVID epidemic. When we started to recover, another crisis, and now we are in a war, which means everything is against a stable recovery and a stable growth period. And to add this crisis, other types of crises, like demographic crisis. We know that European demographic situation is just terrible. We still have a migration crisis. And we in Europe even lost, in the European Union, we lost a member state, one of the biggest member states, which that did cause and still causes institutional and economic crisis. Where we are now, facing this war, what business and families are experiencing is increasing energy and food prices, which are all translated into higher and higher inflation, worsening supply chains disruptions with shortages of products, and a general feeling of insecurity. So this is the economic environment we are talking about. And with our distinguished panelists, we will discuss how they feel it from doing business, for representing family business interests, from the side of the government, and even from the point of view of the think tank. So I have a very, very good panel here. Again, thanks for accepting it. I will introduce all of them before I give them the floor. They will, at the first round of questions, come up with a very small presentation of 4 minutes, more or less, because I would like this panel to be a real debate, and they are invited, not just us, but even invited to react to one another. So let me start with Jesus Casado. Hola y bienvenido. Jesus is the Secretary General of European Family Businesses. He's from Spain. European Family Businesses represents the 9% of European GDP, so it's a remarkable figure. He's Deputy CEO for Instituto Empresa Familiar. He holds an executive MBA from ESADE and a Bachelor of Law from Comillas Pontifical University. So Jesus, welcome. Thanks for being here with us. So do you share my general description? How you see the economic situation now from the point of view of family businesses, and what is on your to-do list from the point of view of a family business organization?
Okay, thank you so much, Nico. Is it working? Yeah, okay, perfect. So thank you, Nico. Thank you for the invitation from Political Networks for Values. I have to say that among the fora I attend at the European Union, there are very rare occasions where there is a forum where there is shared values and where we talk specifically about values. So it's an honor to be here and invited by all of you. To your first question, do I agree with your analysis? I would say yes and no. Depends. It depends. I studied in the Jesuits. They will always say that. There has been major changes in history that have changed the world. Recently, 2 world wars. We've had the crisis in 29, the fall of the Soviet Union. We have another pandemic, a recent pandemic in 1918. And yes, there was changes afterwards, but and we are talking about human values and dignity. The human nature doesn't change. We are still the same because we adapt. But talking about business changes, business owners are very practical, and they will focus on what is working for them and what is the adaptation they need to this environment. I will say that first, there are some changes that I see based on my conversations with business owners. We have here 2 of our representatives in Hungary that are here perhaps to stay. Time will determine that. First is that flexibility at work is more and more demanded by business owners to attract talent. People have been working from home lately, and talent requests more and more that in order to be able to work and to integrate in the workforce. 2, sustainability issues are at the center of the business strategy. And I think this is going to stay. 3, there is a tendency to relocalization of the production, and this will diminish the globalization trend in order to preserve strategic independence. That's something that's happening. We will see if it's there to stay. And finally, what I have perceived in the business owners is new methods of engagement with clients and with suppliers. In particular, what have I seen as a reaction from family business owners? Well, I have to say that all the entrepreneurs I know, they have in their DNA the possibility to face challenges and react. Big or small, they're always facing challenges. And what I have seen all across Europe in my business owners is that they have reduced at all possible the costs in order to preserve the workforce. Family businesses have been very reluctant to lay their workforce, unlike big multinationals. And 2, they have contributed to the communities where they live in with money, with vaccines, with all kinds of help, logistical distribution, much more than the big multinationals where the compromise is not such. And why? And with that, I will just approach to my end of the intervention. Because family businesses are a force for good. They are a social institution, just not an economic asset. Family businesses they have values in their DNA, not just a corporate culture. First, they're companies with a face, with strong roots in the local community where they're based. They are not easily movable, even if they are multinationals. Two, they think long-term. They think in generations, not in quarters. Their goal is not to preserve the assets and the profitability of the shareholders, but to preserve the legacy and the reputation of the family that is behind. Four, their culture is value-driven, with a high sense of social responsibility. And finally, they are cautious by nature, because their first priority is to protect their downside risk. So family businesses are natural advocates of a more conscious capitalism. They represent the patient capital. The Business Roundtable, the American Business Roundtable 2 years ago, they agreed to change and they proclaimed that they shifted the capitalism from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. Okay, family businesses have been doing that not 2 years ago, but for decades. Because that's intrinsically the values that, for the long-term vision they've been preaching and really creating. And finally, what is in my to-do list? Okay, and with that I will finish. I will resume in one word: recognition. Because family businesses, and we have two here, they are very discreet. They're humble. They don't want to speak up. They just go and do their work. But we family businesses need to be recognized by politicians, by the EU in particular, because the contribution that we do to the communities where we live, it's essential to create change. And finally, and as a summary, family businesses are really a force for good, because the values that we are discussing here, you can discuss that politically, intellectually, but you need the private sector. You need to have an ally, private sector, to put that in practice. And I really think that family businesses based in values are the perfect ally for your cause. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jesus. You just said so many key words on real life, how to put our values, conservative values, in practice, and what they need most, and what kind of stability they bring to the economic systems. Now let's move overseas, if I may, ask Alejandro Chafuen from Acton Institute. Alejandro represents, as I've just mentioned, this very distinguished think tank. He knows very well the situation overseas concerning the economic situation and the situation of smaller and even family businesses. So, Alejandro, do you share my original statement that the world will never be as it was before the pandemic? Whether the changes we are experiencing now will last? And whether it would be worth bringing the old world order in economic terms back, or we just have to go for something completely new.
Thank you, and Your Excellency and President Kast and everyone who made this possible. First of all, congratulations for not ceding the word freedom to the enemy. You know, the title of the summit, you know, freedom at stake, building and strengthening a pro-freedom agenda globally. I usually describe my life. I started as falling in love with freedom as a nasty libertarian. Then I fell in love with God. But then I realized that they were the same thing. And so my love for freedom has only grown. And your decalogue of principles is absolutely superb. Now, you say, will the world be the same? Heraclitus, this famous Greek philosopher, says we will never be able to step in the same river again. Everything is changed. Yes, but the Danube continues to flow and follow no, the laws of nature. And also, the laws of economics also follow natural law, and they apply no matter what your ideology is. So if you overtax, you overspend, you overregulate, you overprint money, you are going to create problems. Before Putin's invasion of Ukraine, gas prices in the United States were up 70%. Inflation had more than doubled. And it's all the result of economic laws. Many of the problems, are self-inflicted. And again, this is an international conference. Each country is different. On energy, the United States, for the first time before this current president, was able to become an export country in energy, in oil. Before, we were an importing country. The price of gasoline was one of the lowest ever. The level of unemployment was very, very low. And it's all based on one of the key foundations of the free society. Freedom is based in the free society on two institutions: the family, the first one, and second, the private property. Private property was born to protect the intergenerational family. The United States is one of the only countries in the world where the underground belongs to the private property owner. Most of the world, Latin America, Africa included, they are beggars like sitting in mountains of gold with enormous energy resources, but you cannot produce them because 80% of the world energy market is in the hand of authoritarian dictators. So this is a self-inflicted wound. So we can solve it. Food production, for sure, we're going to have a big blow with what's happening in Ukraine. But my native country, that was the breadbasket of the world, in other words, the government does the opposite of what they should do. They're increasing export taxes. So people, instead of increasing their food production, they are lowering it. So this is Argentina, and I imagine that in any other countries of the world will happen the same. Sense of insecurity. Sorry, when you have a big bully next door, that will be very hard to solve in the near future. Imagine the impact on families, hundreds of thousands, millions of families destroyed and separated by this war. The previous president called to shame European governments for not spending what they should to defend their countries. He's the only one who really put pressure. Now, what will happen in the future to spend more money? Or you have to shift spending, or you have to increase taxes. Taxes today in the OECD, Europe included, are at the highest level historically they have ever been. So that has a cost on family businesses. How much this insecurity will grow? I think all will depend how much we punish Russia after defeating its goal to conquer Ukraine. The key impact, just to finish, we have to measure it in what happens in the three major blocks of the world: China, the European Union, and the United States, and how this new economy affects, and you have basically described part of the Benedictine option, or part of being able to leave some of this cosmopolitan cultures is becoming easier for many people working in the United States. For small businesses and small NGOs like us, it's difficult to retain staff if we are in cheap cities, because people in big cities are hiring our staff and letting them stay in their nice houses in a rural setting. So again, many challenges ahead. What happens in the future, I think, will depend on what we do from here onwards. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alejandro. And I made a mistake not mentioning that you are from Argentina, and you held a PhD in economics from International College and the BS from Argentine Catholic University. Let's move again back to the continent, specifically to Hungary. And I'm very pleased to greet in this panel Balázs Dobos, Deputy Secretary of State for Economic Development of Hungary. He is a former director of IFCA Public Benefit Nonprofit Ltd, which is a kind of background institution to the Ministry for Technology. He's a former head of Department of Strategic Analysis at the same ministry. He holds a bachelor degree in international relations from Budapest Corvinus University. A lot has been already said about Hungary, family policy, pro-family policies, but I would like to invite our Deputy State Secretary to present a bit the economic asset this pro-family policy brings. What kind of measures have been introduced in the last 12 years, and whether it is really a good investment, this pro-business, pro-family approach, and whether we can, I'm sure that we can, but he can prove it through the presentation of the measures that even in economic terms, it's worth doing it. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Actually, I'm really happy to be here today and answer your question, Nico, regarding the economic aspects of family support policies and the question whether it's worth it. Quite often, it seems that we talk about economic policies and economic development as some kind of technocratic notions detached from everyday reality. But actually, when you think about the fact that around 95% of micro-enterprises and even over 20% of medium and large enterprises in Hungary are actually family-owned businesses. So I would argue that families are the cornerstone of economic policies, and therefore we should definitely take a value-based approach. And the freedom for entrepreneurship, low taxation, these are really key elements for a successful economic policy. And also keeping in mind that at the end of the chain of the events, there are always families. So when we think about SME support and SME development, actually in Hungary, the government has been steadily decreasing taxation, and we have one of the lowest rate of corporate income tax in all over Europe. It's at 9%, because we believe that self-bearing families and small enterprises that can provide employment, companies who are willing to invest in their own areas, in their own city, I think these are the ones that we should rely on. And also, so we can say that this is indirect support for families, but also there are direct measures. Actually, in 2022, so this year, the Hungarian government has allocated over 6% of the GDP to supporting families directly. This is more than double the OECD average, which is at around 2.5%. This significant amount provides opportunities for families to have as many children as they want, because prior 2010, having children was actually a poverty risk. Now the government aims to support families to have as many children as they want and when they want it. We have a number of measures, just to name a few. There is a baby expecting support, which is basically a cash support for families who are willing to have children. There is also the family housing support scheme, where over 200,000 families receive support to have their own home. And it is not just important in terms of supporting families, but obviously all these measures are incentives and providing market opportunities for SMEs, especially Hungarian SMEs, while at the same time Hungary remains open to attracting foreign direct investment. So I think we should definitely take a value-based approach when we talk about economic policies. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know whether Balázs, you have the same experience, but whenever I mention that in Hungary we have a flat tax of 9% for corporate tax, and then we have a 15% flat tax for income tax, well, many people say, okay, tomorrow I move to Hungary. So it's very, very attractive, and it's not by chance that in the last couple of years we were among the countries with highest rates of investments, foreign investments, because it's really essential for good business environment and very, very attractive. Okay, but of course we can say very nice things from the side of government and me from the side from parliament, but what really matters, whether the real life players, representatives of family businesses in Hungary, what they say, how they see everything, whether this last 12 years as a kind of economic experiment, how it works in their case. So I'm very pleased that both Mr. László Rudas and Mr. Dávid Boros have accepted my invitation. Let me start with the presentation of Mr. Rudas, who is president of the National Association of Family Businesses. If I'm not mistaken, this organization represents the smaller family businesses in Hungary. Mr. Rudas is president of the Rudas Holding with important activities in the immobile sector, and he's also owner of a private healthcare service company. So Mr. Rudas, because small is beautiful, and we start giving the priority to the representation of the smaller businesses. So how you see, how you have experienced this kind of policy, pro-family, pro-business policy, whether it was really pro-business, what you like or what you disliked in the last years. Thank you.
Nagyon szépen köszönöm a lehetőséget, hogy
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here
ezen impozáns falak között
amidst this beautiful and awesome building. It is not the first opportunity that I am actually here. Last time I was talking about the importance of the Conciliatory Council of Businesses, where I was a keynote speaker. I did not know a lot about the topic, but I looked into it, did my research, and the main essence of my keynote speech is perhaps even more current today than it was back then. I stated back then that today it is better to have a very bad but long-term stability supporting agreement than uncertainty. And this is my message to politicians. Policy guaranteeing long-term stability is better than a victorious war for any party. And I will now turn to the question as well. I am proud of the fact that I can lead an organization which incorporates family enterprises, knowing full well that the family enterprises are the greatest employers in Hungary. A larger part of the GDPs are created by family enterprises. It was 10 years ago that the first organization uniting family enterprises was established. I was the president of that. Now it is held by my friend David, that is the Family Business Network of Hungary, because that is the representation of the larger family businesses, where our strategic objective was that straight-line inheritance should be free of taxation, and I am proud to report that Hungary was the first country in Europe where this opportunity, this law, this regulation was actually put into force. This freed us from a burden which for the family businesses living their rejubilation after 40 years of communism provided an opportunity which would have been impossible to create in our capital scarce business environment. And then we decided that it is not only the larger family enterprises and corporations that we must represent, therefore we established the National Federation of Family Enterprises. This is not necessarily the representation of new companies, because it is a fundamental condition that the family enterprise that becomes a member must have 10 years of history. Now, Any enterprise that can survive for 10 years in Hungary counts as a serious company. You have dozens of employees, 50 to 100, and even the revenues are rather significant, but it is hard to achieve this, and that is why we established this interest representation organization. There was a 2008 world crisis with a short recovery followed by COVID and now the war, as we heard in the question. These companies have proven that the philosophy of family enterprises, that they are long-term investments across generations, can spark long-term decisions, which in the case of other enterprises cannot occur. In the case of a normal company, there is the labor force, the materials, the know-how, the skills, where according to very stringent rules, the production process takes place, at the end results of which we have a product and the profit. In the case of a family enterprise, the same principles are in place. However, what is within the black box is what represents the highest value, and it is not profit. That is the main driving force. The freedom of enterprise. You can have your family members work, you can employ the family labor force 24 hours a day, and they acknowledge that. They acknowledge it because when the crisis occurs, when at the Eastern Hedge Hospital, in the case of one of our family enterprise, there was a ban on healthcare activities due to COVID because there was no opportunity for physical contact. And the outpatient services that we provide was terminated. We sent home all our employees, but we provided a full salary for all our employees for 2 months without them performing any tasks. What was really surprising was that after that, people and colleagues thanked us for our approach in a very active and curious manner, which was really touching. One of our enterprises changed their profile due to the economic crisis. After our largest tenants moved out of the office building, with a quick decision we decided to create a dormitory for workers. With a very serious investment, we implemented this dormitory, but then the COVID came and no workers arrived. Another turn, we decided to turn it into a student dormitory because the students at least are present physically. Millions of refurbishments, obviously a quality improvement, renovation was necessary. And my experience showed that the Roma married couple coming from the countryside where the husband did not even graduate from primary school, and where I told him that if he graduated from primary school, I would pay for the costs of acquiring a driver's license. They brought with them the father-in-law and the grandfather and the grandmother, and they were working on the refurbishment, and at the weekend they were painting the house. I and my wife actually joined them in this activity. I do believe that this is what is decisive, and this is the difference in the philosophy, the operational philosophy of a family enterprise. I don't know how much time I still have left because I could keep telling you stories. Oh, my time is up. Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is how when we speak about categories, values, and then from a personal experience, you see how they can really be put into practice. So I'm also very pleased to greet in the panel Dávid Boros. He's the chair of Family Business Network Hungary. If I'm not mistaken, they are affiliate to Family Business run by our Secretary General, Jesus Casado. He's former co-chair of Family Business Networks, and he's owner of Oasis Gardening Company. So, David, could you just tell us how you felt on your own skin through your business organization these years, and how you see the difficulty family businesses, mid-caps, because in your case it's no longer small businesses but more mid-caps, how you feel the present economic situation in Europe, in Hungary, and in the broader terms in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't feel myself comfortable because I'm the last one, so already everything has been told, I think, from what I can tell to you. So FBN, Family Business Network, is an international organization that is in 65 countries, more than thousands of family businesses. And the Hungarian chapter, the Family Business Network in Hungary, was founded in 2009. And yes, our first president was Mr. László Rudas. And this is the situation you've seen, that when a founder has a power to speak a lot about their business. And this is what we do, because there's business network in our name, but what we do is not business networking. It's not B2B, it's F2F. It means families to families. So we build a platform where families can contact to each other, can share their experiences, can learn from each other using their best practices. And this is a platform, it's an international platform for all. And I would like to tell a few words about Hungarian specialties, because from 2009, our first mission was to point that Hungary is a very special situation in all the Eastern countries, because most of the large family businesses, as we know that in Hungary you call them large family businesses, but these are mid-size in a European or in a worldwide comparison. So most of these family businesses were founded after the change, so they are in the first generation, or in the first, second, or maybe a few of them in the second, third generation succession. So it is a very special and actual dangerous situation for not just family businesses. It's also a dangerous situation for the economic, because these family businesses are usually the largest employers. They producing some special parts or items of a huge system, which can be lost if the business closing. And this is the risky situation is in the first succession. So that's why it was in the first 10 years, it was our mission to show it and to teach them to recognize that they are in this situation, they are a family business, and they need to talk about it. And this, I would like to tell that it is not a business issue. It is a personal issue what they are in. So they have to be open. They have to learn from other countries where most of the family businesses are in the third, fourth generation, not in the first one. So other question was how we react in the crisis. Yes, as you know, that mostly the family businesses are agile, faster decision making. Mostly the owners are involved in their business, so they have a better view, overall view than the professional companies, so they can make significant better decisions than professionals. And mostly the family businesses are thinking in long term, really long term, over generations. And that's why their investments are more stable than the professional companies who are thinking in the next quarter or the next year's profit. They can reinvest in their company. Their name are on the gate. So that's why they feel a special responsibility, not just financial responsibility for that.
Thank you so much. Flexibility and readiness to adaptation, I think these are key words in business, and this is really something we can learn from family-owned companies. Jesus, let me share with you a personal experience of mine, because what I would like to ask you is how you feel about the European Commission policies and the attitude vis-à-vis family businesses. It was still before COVID when I wanted to launch a pilot project and get some financing, because there is a special financial line in Brussels for that, to deal with this very special problematic of family businesses, secession, a lot has been already said, how you can, the heritage problems, because we have very little experience in that, and you now have to know that in Central Eastern Europe, in the former communist countries, we are now in the years, and I think our Hungarian entrepreneurs can prove what I'm saying, that when the first generation of entrepreneurs is just by biology, and I'm one of those who respect biology, are just getting towards the end of the term in running their own enterprises, and it's vital that someone takes it over, hopefully a family member. So it's a real problem, and we know very little about the situation in our region. And my pilot project would have been to have a kind of survey on them to understand better their problems. And actually it was not accepted by the Commission, saying that, well, we deal with SMEs and we don't want to deal with family businesses. I was quite shocked. I think Jesus knows the problem, because I was asking for some advice before tabling my proposal. So how you see this issue, and how you see whether you get, as a very important organization representing 9% of European GDP, whether they are receptive enough to your ideas and requests?
It depends. No, really, I think the European Commission has been working with this concept of SME, small and medium enterprises, for more than 50 years. So there is a reaction to change, and it's normal. And they say most of the policies that will apply to SMEs could apply to family businesses, but that's not true. So there is, from the European Commission, a reaction to create another category that will complicate their lives, essentially. But the transition that both Mr. Rudesh and Mr. Bowers have been talking about is an essential component that not a simple SME will suffer. Because it's not a business issue, as very well David was pointing out. It's an emotional issue. And it's very complex, so you have to prepare it far in advance. And especially in Hungary and in this part of the world, where there is no experience, is even more important, and I have been telling that to the European Commission several times. But the echo is smaller than I thought. So I will seek the support of members of the European Parliament here present, and anyone else who would like to open their eyes. That's my job, but any effort will be good to really claim for more attention on that sense.
Thank you. Let's move on to Alejandro again. And, well, a lot has been already said about the Hungarian conservative policy, lowering taxes, flat tax, incentives to do business, favorable business environment, which, as I've said at the beginning, are kind of fundamentals of a conservative economic policy. My impression is, but correct me please if I'm wrong, that these terms are not very fashionable nowadays in the world. Why is it like that? So why do I have the feeling sometimes that certain issues get more importance now? And I'm not against greening, because sustainability is very important, but to have too many conditions for businesses, sometimes I have the feeling that we are laying down so many new conditions, obstacles, and administrative burden for companies, and Brussels is really a master on that, that SMEs and family businesses, day by day, have more obligations and less time to do what they really want to do, to serve their original business purpose. So why is conservative policy less frequent? And do we have a chance for change?
Well, it was described by several speakers before us, Mr. Jaime Mayor Oreja and others. You know, we are basically at war, at a culture war, where the forces of big government and big corporations now have the same sort of model, this model of alone together, where the human being is detached from any mediating institutions between them and the states. So the collectivists like it because then we will go to the state, and seek some help because we have a social inclination. And some major corporations love it because the human being becomes a little tool, a little clog in the production system. But I like to be fair. I'm afraid of government intervention, but let's be fair. If the Hungarian government will be giving money, big plan for solar panels, everyone would clap, You have a cultural program putting rainbow flags all over Hungary. Nothing happening. Subsidies for ports, you name it, whatever you want, nothing happens. Now, the basic unit of production of the free society, the family, where family and private property come together in what the business enterprise. Then you start supporting them and you say, fascist! It's completely unfair. But I put this attitude of having some causes that are completely banned from this new world order, that are part of this new sort of culture war and great reset plans, that are being pushed with very powerful players. Look, I have worked in almost 30 countries through think tanks and organizations and professors. There are many mix of conservative government, public-private collaboration. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, they had their protective areas of the economy, but still huge respect for private property, good respect for rule of law, open economy, not completely closed. But there are many varieties. But Hungary, I think, is one of the first countries that said, stop, we are not going to play the game. One thing is agreeing on taxes or tariffs, but not really defining what a human being person is and how we speak about culture. So I think the basic reason is that there is a major agenda, and Hungary said, no, we are not going to play by it.
But do we have a chance do we have a chance for having more allies, at least for our economic policy approach?
There was someone in the audience, and I think he's one of the first guys who said, stop, Ignacio Arzuaga. Now, when we all had to being polite in democracy was go happy and civilized to the slaughterhouse. That's what our Republicans said, or part of the Partido Popular previously in Spain said. And I said, no, this is not working. They promise something and the politicians, they don't do it. And the weird thing today is having politicians, sometimes they're not very gentle, like former President Trump, but they say, I'm going to do this, and they do it. And they surprise us. The fact that things that people said cannot be done were done. In my adopted country, the United States, they're being done in Hungary. Some things are done in Poland and many other countries of the world. So I have to be optimistic. But like Václav Klaus said 10 days ago here in Hungary, it's a major challenge. Each of us will have to play a role in this reconquering, it's a re-Christianization of the world.
Well, being a conservative means that what I said before, if I'm in the position, I will do it. I think it's really something that we respect our promises and we keep them. I think it's really vital. And it is very interesting what you have said about labeling. The labeling has become very fashionable, even in economic terms. My question to our Deputy State Secretary is that, well, two things. The first one is Mr. Jaffoen was referring to this, that, well, Hungary is quite unique in implementing this kind of policies. That when you go to Brussels, I mean, your minister goes to Brussels and you talk to the Commission, don't you feel very alone? Or do you have, at least in the corridors, some allies? So how you feel about it? And the second question would be that under the present circumstances, I was mentioning in my introduction inflation, disrupting supply chains, so life for families, not just family businesses, but individual families have become more complicated, and more and more of them are having living costs. And I think if we continue with the present sanction systems and having an ideology-driven economic policy, and I think it's a major problem, we will have more and more poverty in Europe, which is a real danger. So how you think we could shield families against all this phenomena?
Regarding Brussels, I really believe that it's a beautiful city, especially on sunny days, so I would like to leave it at that. But regarding economic policies, one of the first targets or goals of the government in 2010 was to create 1 million additional jobs. And I think employment is key, because when people are on government subsidies, that's not a healthy thing. And the Hungarian government receives enormous amount of criticism for fostering people to return to the labor market as soon as possible. And actually now we have the employment is higher with 1 million people, so it was achievable, and with a pro-business and pro-family agenda, this could be achieved. Also, in these times, protecting families is basically more important than ever, and that's, for example, why utility costs are fixed in Hungary, which actually shocked the key players in the energy sector, but actually this helps preserving the financial health and of families, so the purchasing power remains basically intact, and this is, I think, a huge achievement.
Thank you so much. Utility cost is vital. I think it was Alejandro who said it's terrible that in the United States, I can't remember the figure, maybe you said that gas price went up by 70%. Well, I can tell you that in Europe there are certain member states when gas prices went up 400%. So just to compare the situation. So I'm turning to our real business players, now to Mr. Boros and Mr. Rudas. What should or could be done for family businesses? And this is my final question, actually, and by this we will conclude our panel. So what is still missing in Hungary or in European terms, just in a very short format? Thank you.
May I be the first one? Thank you. I think, as you know, that the tax environment is good in Hungary, so it's very optional. It's 0 in inheritance tax and 9% in company taxes, which is really the best one. And I think this is the family businesses can be crisis-proof when we can make our decisions in a free space. So that's the only thing we need, that to have a free space, to have our flexibility. And I don't think that everyone, I mean, everybody must be an entrepreneur, but there are companies, I call them sustainable entrepreneurships, we have to support. We have to choose them, who are the locals, who are investing local also, and giving, you employ people local, and they are important for the local government too.
Thank you.
After the change in the political regime, my generation had the opportunity to enter into entrepreneurship again. 40 years had passed since the last family enterprises, and now we have reached a period where we have to pass on the baton. Thankfully, we have children who will take over the company, but it is not certain that all our children want to participate equally in the management of the company. During the generation change, it must be funded, that, for instance, one of the inheritors be able to buy out the others, and the corporation must have a guarantee that there will be a return on the investment provided in the form of a credit support, provided to support this activity. And the same goes when we wish to promote entrepreneurship. A management cannot make enough money to accumulate large enough capital to purchase a company, but in the next 10 years from the revenues of the company, they can achieve an income which enables them to repay this resource. This is very important for Hungarian family enterprises to survive a change in generation.
All the panelists for the interventions, for taking us quite deep into this very special world represented by family businesses. Just a very few words as a kind of summary. It is a special word, the family business, and I think it shows the nice and good face of capitalism, of free entrepreneurship, with very special problems and values, because yes, they are value-driven, because they just not hunting the profit, but even other issues are in their considerations. They care about their employees, otherwise, and at the same time, they are the major employers in all over the world. They have the ability to be very quick in reactions, flexible in their adaptation to the changing world. So I think it's vital in among the present economic situation. And they are ready to go for sustainable business in all the terms, and not just financial sustainability, but for them, sometimes governments should be warned that even sustainability doesn't mean only green, but it means financial sustainability, because it's about their own pockets, so they cannot afford not being financially sustainable. Social sustainability, because they do care about their own employees, and of course greening, because they don't want to destroy their own environment. So this is what they represent, these three types of sustainability at once. Feeling responsible for the local communities is again their specialty, and readiness to share good practices and the readiness to learn from one another. So I think regulators, both at governmental level and at European level, should pay more attention to them, because it's not the case that they have to do things instead of them, just to make their life easier, because this is how they have a chance to create a free space and use this free space. And by this, we got back where we started from, to the notion of freedom, which is so precious to all of us. Thank you so much for your attention.